Mom, there's a man pointing a gun at me. I heard my daughter's voice eerily calm on the phone. Don't worry, I'll handle it. But you might want to come home now before this guy becomes the evening news. I rushed out of the conference room, leaving behind startled faces of my colleagues. We had moved into this neighborhood just 2 weeks ago. Who would have thought the Homeowners Association would welcome my daughter with a gun barrel? They picked the wrong house. More importantly, they had no idea who she was. I never thought I'd be in this situation. After 20 years of marriage, a surprisingly amicable divorce, and finally purchasing my dream home in Oakwood Estates, I expected peace. That's what the brochure promised. What it should have said was a tyrannical micro-kingdom where your property isn't really yours, and armed wannabe cops might threaten your loved ones. My name is Emma Collins, 45 years old, and I'm a consumer rights attorney in Chicago. After the divorce was finalized, I wanted a fresh start in a nice neighborhood with good security and beautiful surroundings. Oakwood Estates checked all those boxes. The colonial-style homes, manicured lawns, and friendly neighbors I met during the open house sold me on the place. The realtor mentioned there was an active homeowners association, but honestly, I didn't think much of it. I'd lived with HOA rules before. How bad could it be? The answer, much, much worse than I could have imagined. On my first official day as a homeowner, I was arranging furniture when the doorbell rang. A nervous-looking woman in her early 50s stood there with a thick binder. "Welcome to Oakwood Estates, Mrs. Collins. I'm Susan Thompson, the HOA secretary. This is your welcome package and rulebook. Please review it as soon as possible to avoid any incidents." The way she said incidents made it sound like breaking HOA rules might result in some sort of public flogging. I thanked her and took the binder, noticing how she glanced over her shoulder before hurrying back to her car. Later that evening, I flipped through the rulebook. My attorney brain immediately spotted numerous legally questionable provisions. No parking on the street between 10 o'clock p.m. and 6 o'clock a.m., even for guests. No gatherings of more than 8 people without prior HOA approval. Mandatory attendance at quarterly HOA meetings. Fines starting at $50 for first offenses, doubling with each subsequent violation. The most absurd. The HOA board reserves the right to enter properties with 24-hour notice to inspect for compliance with regulations. That provision alone was legally unenforceable, a clear violation of property rights. A week later, my daughter Amanda arrived for a 2-week visit during her vacation time. At 32, Amanda was my pride and joy. Brilliant, level-headed, and accomplished. What few people knew, including our new neighbors, was that Amanda was an FBI tactical team commander with 10 years of experience in high-stress situations. She didn't advertise her profession, preferring to describe herself simply as a government employee when asked. The morning after Amanda arrived, we were enjoying coffee on the front porch when a small elderly woman approached from the house next door. "You must be Emma's daughter. I'm Grace Martinez, the neighborhood gossip, according to our illustrious HOA president." She chuckled warmly, extending her hand to Amanda. "Welcome to our little kingdom. Careful not to break any of the royal decrees or you'll meet our self-appointed security chief, Pete. He thinks that badge he bought online makes him the sheriff of Oakwood County." Grace had a conspiratorial glint in her eye that immediately made me like her. She lowered her voice theatrically. "Watch out for Marcus Williams, our HOA president, former cop who retired early. Word is, he was forced out after some scandal, but his buddies helped him avoid charges. Now he runs this place like his personal fiefdom, and Pete is his loyal enforcer." I parked my car that evening, apparently 2 inches over the designated space line, a line that wasn't even visible in the dim street lighting. The next morning, a bright orange notice was stuck under my wiper blade. Violation: improper parking, fine $50. Payable within 7 days to avoid additional penalty. "This is ridiculous," I said to Amanda, waving the orange violation notice over breakfast. "I'm not paying $50 for being 2 inches over an invisible line." Amanda examined the notice, her trained eye catching details I'd missed. "Mom, look at the signature. This wasn't issued by the HOA directly. It's signed by P. Rodriguez, Security Enforcement. Is that even an official position?" Less than 30 minutes after sending my email questioning the fine, My phone rang. Mrs. Collins, Marcus Williams, Oakwood Estates' HOA president. His voice was deep with a forced politeness that didn't mask the underlying irritation. I received your concerns about our parking enforcement. Perhaps as a newcomer, you don't understand how things work here. We maintain property values through strict adherence to our rules. Everyone follows them, no exceptions. I strongly suggest you pay the fine and adjust your attitude. Before I could respond with the legal precedents I'd already researched, he continued, his tone hardening. Oakwood Estates might not be the right fit for people who can't follow simple rules. Things tend to get uncomfortable for troublemakers. That evening, Amanda and I were discussing strategies for the upcoming meeting when we heard a strange noise from the front yard. Amanda, always alert, was at the window in seconds. Mom, you need to see this. I joined her just in time to watch a heavy-set man in what looked like a security uniform using red spray paint to draw a large X on our front lawn. What the hell do you think you're doing? I called out, rushing to the front door. The man turned slowly, deliberately finishing his vandalism before facing me. Official HOA warning, ma'am. This property has received multiple compliance notices. Multiple? We'd received exactly one just this morning. This is your final warning before further action. He tapped the holster on his belt, not subtly, before walking away. Amanda's expression was calm, almost amused. Did he just imply he might use a weapon over a parking violation? She asked quietly, pulling out her phone to take photos of the lawn. Mom, I think I'm going to stick around a bit longer than planned. This just got interesting. There was something in her tone that made me pause. Not fear, but the calculated interest of someone who had just spotted a puzzle they were particularly qualified to solve. The next evening, we arrived at the community center for the HOA meeting to find about 40 residents already seated in rows of folding chairs. Marcus Williams, a tall man with silver hair and the rigid posture of someone who enjoys authority, stood at the front with Pete, the lawn vandal from yesterday, hovering nearby. I recognized Susan Thompson sitting behind a small table with meeting minutes and financial reports. She avoided eye contact when we walked in. Before we begin, let's welcome our newest resident, Emma Collins. All eyes turned to me. Mrs. Collins has already demonstrated her special perspective on our community standards. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room, but most faces remained impassive. For the next 45 minutes, I watched in horrified fascination as Marcus and Pete ran the meeting like petty dictators. When a man I would later learn was David Chen questioned why security expenses had tripled in 6 months, Marcus interrupted him. We've discussed this before. David, increased security is non-negotiable. Given recent regional incidents, when the financial report concluded, I raised my hand. Marcus pointedly looked elsewhere until no other hands remained. Yes, Mrs. Collins, he finally acknowledged, not bothering to hide his annoyance. I have several questions about the legal basis for some of your enforcement protocols, I began, my voice steady, particularly the provision allowing HOA representatives to enter private property for compliance inspections that directly contradicts state property laws. A tense silence fell over the room. Additionally, your fine structure exceeds what's permissible under state statutes governing homeowners associations. Marcus's face flushed, his knuckles whitening around the podium. Mrs. Collins, we appreciate your legal opinions. However, our covenant was established with guidance from top HOA attorneys. These matters were settled long before you arrived. His smile didn't reach his eyes. If you'd spend as much time reading the welcome package as you did trying to find loopholes, you'd understand that by purchasing an Oakwood Estates, you've already consented to our governance structure. As the meeting concluded, I noticed Susan slipping a folded note into my hand as I passed her table. Outside the community center, I unfolded it. Careful. Cameras and microphones in common areas. They're watching. Before I could process this warning, Pete deliberately bumped into me, nearly knocking me off balance. We know how to handle people like you, he muttered just loudly enough for me to hear. Ask the Johnsons why they sold so quickly last year. When I returned home, I found Amanda in animated conversation with Grace Martinez and David Chen in our living room. Mom, Amanda said, her eyes bright with excitement. I think we found a small army to fight the neighborhood tyrant. Before she could elaborate, my phone chimed with an email notification. The subject line read, Sirius violated. Ion, $500 fine. Sent from Marcus Williams' HOA email address. Unauthorized gathering, I read aloud from my phone. This is absurd. They're claiming having guests in our own home violates HOA rules. David nodded grimly. They pulled the same thing with me last month when I hosted my brother's family. Called it an unregistered event exceeding occupancy guidelines. This is how they operate. Find any excuse to pressure people who don't fall in line. Grace sipped her tea, nodding in agreement. They've been doing this for years. Most people just pay the fines to avoid conflict. Those who fight back suddenly find themselves with broken windows that neighborhood kids must have caused, or plumbing issues that mysteriously affect only their homes. She leaned forward. But the Collins aren't most people, are they? Amanda grinned, a determined expression I hadn't seen since she took down a notorious fraud ring 3 years ago. David has been documenting Marcus and Pete's activities for months. Show her, David. He opened his laptop and played a series of video clips from his home security system. Marcus and Pete accepting cash from a construction contractor working on a house without proper permits. Pete placing violation notices only on homes of residents who had questioned the board. And most disturbing, Marcus and a man in a business suit examining houses while referencing a list, including mine. They've got a blacklist, David explained. Homes they want to target because the locations are prime for redevelopment once the new commercial zone is approved across the highway. Grace pulled a small notebook from her purse. I'm a retired investigative journalist. Old habits die hard. I've been keeping records of every suspicious activity since Marcus took over the HOA 3 years ago. 26 families have been forced out through harassment, selective enforcement, and in some cases, what I'd see outright intimidation. The homes are always purchased by shell companies that trace back to Marcus's brother-in-law's real estate investment firm. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't just petty power abuse, it was a calculated real estate scheme. So they're not just neighborhood tyrants, they're real estate predators, I said, feeling the familiar fire that ignited whenever I encountered systematic injustice. As a consumer rights attorney, I'd seen countless schemes to defraud ordinary people, but this one struck a deeper chord. Amanda was studying David's footage with the intense focus I'd seen her apply to complex FBI cases. Look at their pattern, she pointed out. They escalate gradually. First, minor violations with small fines, then increasingly absurd infractions with larger penalties, followed by maintenance issues that make life uncomfortable, and finally direct intimidation. She paused the footage on Marcus's face, zooming in on his expression as he accepted cash from the contractor. That's not just greed, she observed quietly. That's the look of someone who enjoys the power. The next morning, I filed a formal complaint with the City Housing Authority about the HOA's practices. By afternoon, our water was shut off. Emergency maintenance on your section of the line, Pete announced when I confronted him, not even trying to hide his smirk. Should be back on in 6 hours or so. HOA regulations permit essential infrastructure maintenance at our discretion. Maybe keep a few bottles of water handy next time you decide to file complaints. Amanda watched this exchange from the porch, her expression neutral, but her eyes calculating. That evening, while I was on a conference call with colleagues, Amanda installed hidden security cameras around our property using equipment she'd borrowed from her FBI resources. That night, we noticed Pete's car parked across the street, occasionally shining a flashlight toward our windows. Intimidation tactics, Amanda explained, unfazed. They're trying to make us uncomfort. Able enough to either fall in line or move out. Classic bullying behavior. Remember Susan, the nervous HOA secretary? She just texted me. Wants to meet tomorrow at Riverdale Coffee Shop. Says she can help. Amanda's smile was confident, almost predatory. Mom, I think we just got ourselves an inside man in the enemy castle. The Riverdale Coffee Shop was busy enough to provide anonymity. Amanda arrived early, securing a corner table with a view of both entrances. Susan arrived precisely on time, nervously scanning the room before sitting down. Thank you for meeting me, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. What I'm about to tell you could cost me my job. Maybe worse. Susan extracted a USB drive from her purse, sliding it across the table. I've been documenting financial discrepancies for 2 years. Marcus doesn't know I have accounting experience. He thinks I'm just a glorified secretary who follows orders. There's nearly $500,000 missing from the HOA reserves, funneled through fake maintenance companies that all lead back to shell corporations. Her hands trembled slightly as she continued. My mother lived in Oakwood before I did. Marcus and Pete harassed her for months when she opposed their fee increases. She finally sold for 30% below market value to Marcus's brother-in-law's company. While Amanda was meeting with Susan, I discovered a new line item on our HOA bill, Enhanced Security Assessment, $200 a month. When I called the HOA office to question this, I was told it was a special assessment approved by the board due to increased security concerns. No such concerns had been mentioned at the meeting. They're targeting your house specifically, Amanda explained upon returning, showing me documents Susan had provided. Your lot is one of 5 that would complete a contiguous block of properties their investment group wants to control before the commercial rezoning app. Lication goes through. They've successfully pushed out 3 of the 5 homeowners already. This isn't just HOA corruption, it's organized real estate fraud. That evening, Amanda contacted her colleague, Agent Robert Kim, at the FBI, asking him to run background checks on Marcus and Pete. Agent Robert called back the next day with disturbing information. Marcus Williams was forced to resign from the police department after multiple excessive force complaints and an internal affairs investigation into evidence tampering. Pete Rodriguez has no legitimate security credentials, and his concealed carry permit was revoked 3 years ago for brandishing at a supermarket customer. Amanda had just ended the call when she received an urgent text from David. Emergency. Pete at my door. He has a gun. She was on her feet immediately, car keys in hand. Stay here, Mom. Call the local police, but tell them this is a potential armed standoff situation. I'm going over there. Before I could protest, she was out the door. I could barely breathe as I made the call to police, reporting an armed man threatening my neighbor. The dispatcher assured me officers were on their way, but mentioned they were short-staffed. It could be 15 minutes before anyone arrived. After what felt like hours, but was actually only 6 minutes, I couldn't stand the waiting. I grabbed my car keys and headed to David's house 3 doors down. As I approached, I could see Pete standing on David's porch, one hand resting obviously on his holstered gun, the other pointing aggressively at David's security cameras. Amanda was already there, positioned between David and Pete. Those cameras are a violation of HOA privacy standards, Pete demanded angrily. They're recording common areas without authorization. Take them down now or face fines of $100 per day. David stood his ground. The cameras are on my property, recording my property. That's completely legal under state law. Amanda's voice cut through the tension, calm but authoritative. Sir, I've reviewed the Oakwood Estates Covenant. T thoroughly. Section 12 addresses landscape maintenance schedules, not security systems. Her precise knowledge clearly caught Pete off guard. Who the hell are you? This doesn't concern you. Pete's hand moved closer to his holster. I'm Amanda Collins, a family friend staying with the Collins. And actually, this does concern me since you appear to be threatening a homeowner without legal authority. The situation escalated quickly. Pete, frustrated by Amanda's calm interference, pulled his gun, waving it between Amanda and David. You people don't understand how things work here. When security says take down the cameras, you take down the damn cameras. Instead of showing fear, Amanda glanced at the gun with almost clinical interest. Only amateurs hold a gun like that. Finger on the trigger already. That's interesting. He raised the gun toward the sky and fired a shot, presumably meant to intimidate. What happened next was so fast I could barely follow it. In one fluid motion, Amanda stepped forward, her right hand striking Pete's wrist while her left gripped his elbow. The gun clattered to the ground as she continued the movement, twisting his arm behind his back and taking him to the ground with professional precision. David, she said calmly, could you pick up the weapon carefully by the grip, using your shirt to avoid disturbing fingerprints? And Mrs. Collins, could you please inform the responding officers that we have an armed suspect detained? The police arrived moments later. Amanda identified herself as FBI, showing credentials. This man discharged a firearm in a residential area while threatening civilians, she explained. The weapon appears to be carried without a valid permit based on information we've received from federal sources. As Pete was being placed in the police car, Marcus screeched to a halt at the curb. What's going on here? Pete works for me, for thee. HOA, whatever happened must be a misunderstanding. The lead officer blocked his approach. Sir, step back. This man discharged a firearm during a threatening confrontation and is being arrested. Marcus's face contorted with rage. This is ridiculous. You can't arrest our security officer for doing his job. Who made these accusations? His eyes landed on me, then Amanda, then David. The officer was unimpressed. Sir, unless you want to join him for interfering with an arrest, I suggest you step back now. As Marcus was forced to watch Pete being driven away, he brushed past Amanda with a threatening whisper. You've made a serious mistake. You have no idea who we are or what we can do. Amanda's response was a calm smile. Funny, that's exactly what I was about to say to you. Marcus's retaliation was swift. The next morning, our mailbox was stuffed with violation notices, 17 in total, ranging from unapproved landscape modifications to unauthorized security equipment. That night, someone destroyed the flowers in our front garden. The security footage showed 2 teenagers doing the damage, but their faces were covered. Meanwhile, Agent Robert informed Amanda that the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit had accelerated their investigation into the Oakwood Estates HOA based on the information we'd provided. We've been building a case against several coordinated HOA fraud schemes in the region. Marcus Williams' operation appears to be one node in a larger network. Susan continued providing inside information, delivering copies of financial records showing nearly $500,000 diverted from HOA funds through fake service contracts to companies owned by Marcus's relatives. I organized a meeting of concerned homeowners at a restaurant outside the neighborhood to avoid HOA surveillance. 23 residents attended, many sharing similar stories of harassment. Together, they formed the Fair Homeowners Alliance and drafted a petition demanding a special election to replace the Kerr Rent Board. Susan informed us that Marcus was furious about the growing opposition. He scheduled an emergency HOA meeting, placing membership termination procedures prominently on the agenda, a thinly veiled threat to have me expelled from the community. The emergency meeting was held on a Tuesday evening. Amanda and I arrived to find the room packed. Marcus called the meeting to order with barely contained anger. We're facing an organized effort to undermine the standards that make Oakwood Estates the premier community in this region. Certain new residents, his glare fixed on me, have demonstrated blatant disregard for our rules and have incited others to join their disruptive behavior. When Marcus tried to prevent me from speaking, multiple residents stood up in protest. "Let her speak!" David called out, backed by a chorus of agreement. Marcus's face darkened as he realized he'd lost control of the room. I approached the microphone, laying out evidence of financial mismanagement, selective enforcement, and the pattern of targeting specific properties. The atmosphere shifted dramatically when Susan unexpectedly stood up from her secretary position. Everything Mrs. Collins has said is true. I have documents proving the financial irregularities. Marcus's face went from red to white in seconds. Susan, sit down. You're out of order. But Susan continued, her voice gaining strength. I've witnessed board members intimidating residents, falsifying violation records, and misappropriating funds for years. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Marcus, losing all pretense of control, shouted above the noise. This meeting is adjourned. Everyone leave now. But no one moved. Instead, Grace stood up. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current board as permitted under Article 8 of our bylaws. Marcus stormed out, shouting that everyone would regret this. The membership voted overwhelmingly to remove the entire board and schedule proper elections. As Amanda and I drove home, we felt cautiously victorious, but knew Marcus wouldn't surrender his power without a final fight. Though he's cornered now, Amanda warned, that makes him more dangerous than ever. Her words proved prophetic. When we arrived home, the front door lock had been broken. From the darkness inside, Marcus's voice called out, "We need to talk privately, and this time, no one's calling the police." My heart pounded as Amanda motioned for me to stay behind her. "Marcus," she called calmly into the darkened house, "breaking and entering is a federal crime. Add that to brandishing a weapon, and you're looking at serious time." A harsh laugh came from our living room. "I know who you are now, Amanda Collins. My friends at the police department ran your name after yesterday's incident. FBI tactical. Quite impressive, but even federal agents need to sleep, and accidents happen to everyone." We entered cautiously to find Marcus seated in my favorite armchair, a handgun resting casually on his knee. Amanda assessed the situation with a quick glance before focusing on Marcus. What's your endgame here, Marcus? You've already lost control of the HOA. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit has been investigating you for months. Walking away now would be your smartest move. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. Very direct, Agent Collins. I appreciate that. So, I'll be direct too. I have this. He held up a thick document with one hand. A complete retraction of all accusations signed by both of you, accompanied by your immediate notice to sell your property. In return, I'm prepared to be generous. $50,000 above your purchase price. Sign now. We all move on with our lives. Refuse? He gestured with the gun. Things get complicated. Amanda tilted her head curiously. That's your solution? More threats? You realize that's what got you into this mess in the first place? For the next, 20 minutes, Amanda masterfully kept Marcus talking about his plans, his grievances, his sense of entitlement to control the neighborhood. So, let me understand this correctly, she said at one point. You and your brother-in-law's investment firm have been targeting specific properties because they complete a development block that will be worth 3 times as much after rezoning. Marcus, feeling in control with his weapon, became increasingly boastful about the scheme. 34 properties acquired over 3 years, most at 20 to 30% below market value. Once the commercial rezoning goes through next month, we'll clear $7 million in profit minimum. As Marcus continued revealing details, Amanda patiently built a comprehensive confession. When she asked about Pete, Marcus replied, Pete's an idiot, useful for scaring old ladies and placing violation notices. He'll take the weapons charges and keep his mouth shut if he knows what's good for him. I've got enough dirt on half the police department to ensure this all goes away. Marcus finally lost patience with the conversation. Enough talk. Sign the documents now, or I'll make this look like a tragic home invasion gone wrong. He raised the gun directly at me. Your daughter might be FBI, but even she can't move faster than a bullet. Amanda remained unnervingly calm. Before you pull that trigger, Marcus, you should know 2 things. First, that gun you're holding has been reported stolen from the police evidence room 3 years ago. Part of why you retired early, I'm guessing. Second, this entire conversation has been transmitted live to my colleague, Agent Robert Kim, who is currently parked down the street with a tactical team. Marcus's momentary confusion gave Amanda the opening she needed. With explosive speed, she executed a perfect disarming technique, stepping inside his aim while controlling his wrist, removing the gun from his grasp before he could react. In the same fluid movement, she twisted his arm behind his back, forcing him face down onto the floor. Marcus Williams, you're under arrest for breaking and entering, attempted extortion, assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, and about a dozen other charges we'll sort out later. The front door burst open, and Agent Robert entered with 4 FBI agents in tactical gear. Perfect timing, Amanda said, not even slightly out of breath as she maintained her hold on Marcus. Our friend here has been quite informative. Marcus's face contorted with shock and rage as he was handcuffed. You can't do this. Do you know who I am? I have friends in... Amanda cut him off. In the police department, the DA's office, city planning. Yes, we know. They're all being investigated too. Financial Crimes Task Force has been watching your entire network for months. Robert nodded respectfully to Amanda. Commander Collins, any further instructions? Marcus's eyes widened at the title. Commander? Amanda smiled slightly. Special Tactical Operations Commander, FBI Chicago Field Office. And you just threatened my mother at gunpoint. Not your smartest move, Marcus. 1 week later, our backyard was filled with neighbors for an impromptu community barbecue. The news of Marcus and Pete's arrests had spread quickly, along with details of the larger investigation into HOA fraud schemes across the county. Grace had been elected interim HOA president, with Susan serving as treasurer, and David heading a newly formed transparency committee. I can't believe we put up with it for so long, one elderly gentleman told me, shaking his head. We were all so isolated, thinking we were the only ones being targeted. Divide and conquer. It's an old tactic. Amanda was helping serve drinks, looking relaxed among our neighbors. She had extended her leave to help reorganize the HOA with proper checks and balances. I've officially requested a transfer to the Chicago field office, she told me quietly. His whole experience made me realize I've been too far from family. Besides, there's clearly work to be done here. The real estate fraud investigation is expanding, and I want to see it through. 3 months later, I sat in the courtroom as Marcus and Pete faced a judge for sentencing. The prosecution had built an airtight case bolstered by Susan's meticulous records, the recorded confession from our living room, and financial documentation uncovered by the FBI investigation. Amanda testified in her full FBI uniform, her professional demeanor leaving no doubt about the seriousness of Marcus's threats against us. The judge was unsparing in her assessment. Mr. Williams, you abused a position of neighborhood trust to orchestrate a sophisticated fraud scheme using intimidation and threats of violence against the very homeowners you were elected to represent. Your actions show a disturbing pattern of escalation that culminated in armed home invasion. This court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison for the combined charges plus full financial restitution to the Homeowners Association and affected residents. Pete received 8 years for his role. As we left the courthouse, a reporter asked how it felt to take down an HOA tyrant. I thought about the fear I'd felt when Marcus broke into our home, the anger when Pete vandalized our property, and the gradual relief as neighbors united against their bullying. It feels like remembering that even small injustices matter, I replied, and that standing up to them sometimes requires a community, not just an individual, Amanda added with a smile, and sometimes it requires knowing when you're pointing a gun at the wrong person's mother. Back in Oakwood Estates, life had transformed. The newly elected HOA board operated with unprecedented transparency, posting all financial records online and holding open meetings. The previously intimidated residents had found their voices, creating a vibrant community that actually delivered on the promise of neighbors becoming family. On our front lawn, where Pete had once spray-painted his threatening red X, we placed a small, humorous sign. This area protected by FBI. Think twice before pointing guns. It always made visitors laugh, but for us, it represented something profound about standing up to bullies, regardless of what official-looking uniforms they might wear. Sometimes to handle a bully, all you need is a determined mother, a daughter with specialized skills, and a community that finally refuses to be afraid. And perhaps a bit of luck when the bad guys are foolish enough to point a gun at exactly the wrong person.